Mr. McGee, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
You are about to listen to the Totally Super Awesome 80s Reboot Overdrive podcast.
This podcast is our fan tribute to the Incredible Hulk TV show. Be advised it has been exposed to radiation and we caution to listen at your own risk. You have now entered Gammacast.
Hello and welcome to the Gammacast. I'm your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me once again is my wonderful, intelligent friend.
Hi, Charlie. It's Rose, 80s music girl.
80s music girl. Yeah, working on the intros here. Hello, Rose.
Yeah.
So glad to have you. Tonight's episode, our season finale for season 3, and leaving us in this real conundrum of what to do next because there's only like 3 episodes from season 4 on Hulu right now. So,
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do, man. I mean, we have the next 2 episodes, we can do those, but after that, I don't know what to do. Okay, season 3, episode 23, On the Line. First air date, April 11th, 1980. Directed by L.Q. Jones, written by Kenneth Johnson, Karen Harris, and Jill Donner. Oh, Karen Harris and Jill Donner again.
Yeah.
Jill Donner's written a couple of these as Jill Sherman at the time.
Right.
Okay, so real interesting episode. Just to touch on some of our characters, Kathleen Lloyd plays Randy Phelps, who is an ongoing character. She's had a lot of nice roles throughout everything. She was, let's see here, in the 80s, she was on Magnum P.I. for 21 episodes as Carol Baldwin. Who I have no idea who she also in 92 she played another character called Bridget Archer. So she played Bridget Archer, and they kept on bringing her back as Carol Baldwin, and I don't know who that character is, but she was apparently central to the Magnum P.I. mythos. So who knew?
Apparently so.
Yes.
I didn't watch the show much, but she looks familiar.
Yeah, no, she definitely looked familiar. I was looking at her saying, I know this hitter. She was Nurse Linda Wolfowitz on Hill Street Blues for several episodes, and she was in the Gangster Chronicles as Stella Siegel throughout 1981. Yeah, so she's had work. This is her only Incredible Hulk episode, yes. Oh, but she played Elaine on Mrs. Columbo in Feelings Can Be Murder. For those of you who remember, our actual real, and I don't know exactly what character he was, but the actor who played Bennett was an actor by the name of Peter Jason, who has been on. Let's see here, because I was going through his IMDb early. He's been a lot of funnier. This is like all of his current 2000 things, but let's see. In 2004 to 2006, he was Con Stapleton on Deadwood. If you ever watched that HBO series, which I did, a lot of it. He was on Mike Hammer. He was Captain Skip Gleason.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm trying to find any 80s because this is all the 90s. He was in They Live. He played Gilbert in They Live. So there. And I again don't remember who Gilbert was in They Live, but now I have to go back and watch it and say, oh yeah, I remember him from The Incredible Hulk. And yeah, so he had a lot of great characters as well. You know, as always we point out that The Incredible Hulk, they had this great. It was this great studio system at Universal.
Right.
And this is one of the best ones for this because we really see a lot of the Universal Studios backlot.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think is kind of interesting, like the 80s, this was a time when Universal's decided to turn its backlot into essentially an amusement park.
Yeah.
And I think this was kind of a great advertising tool for it. Now we've
I think.
always seen in the Incredible Hulk, especially in these fire episodes, because this is our second forest fire episode. Previously, we had the Mystery Man episode, where David and Jack get sort of trapped in the middle of a forest fire after a plane crash. But
Mm-hmm.
here we get it again, and we see a lot of the same stock footage. Now, at about this time, which actually is a great thing, or a great funny B movie story, is um, Universal had been licensing out all of its all of its B-roll at this point, and this B movie producer, and I'm blanking on his name right now, but he did a lot of great cheesy B films.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically bought all of this footage, and then all of a sudden Universal realized that all of the footage was being used in these bad B films, but they couldn't do anything about it because they'd already sold the rights to it.
Wasn't Ed Wood, was it?
No, Ed Wood did love stock footage and did use a lot of it, but this
Okay.
was actually, because this actually caused a controversy in The Incredible Hulk later, in Never
Yeah.
Give a Trucker an Even Break, was that actually Steven Spielberg had basically shot a movie for Universal when he was like a young guy starting out before he got Jaws.
Yeah.
And they basically recut all of his B footage to make the Incredible Hulk episode Never Give a Trucker an Even Break, and it basically drove Steven Spielberg nuts that they did that. So yeah, Universal had this, because for what it's worth, from Universal's perspective, it was just stuff sitting in their vaults, but it wound up really angering the people who actually shot the original stuff. So,
I can imagine.
yes, but here we see them again using all that B footage in the background. So,
Yeah, they did a really good job, especially with the planes and everything, and doing the
yes.
flyovers. Yeah, I'm looking at this going, what's wrong with this picture? Oh, I know. It's not a part of this movie, technically.
Yes. Well, you can always see that, because you do see like there are definite fashion differentiations
Mm-hmm.
between the older footage and the newer footage, and just
Yeah.
there is no uniformity in the plane styles. So you can have like the big DC-3s and the small little Cessnas, and but one of the things I love about this episode is there is a real mystery here.
Yes, there
A
is.
lot of strong misdirection.
Yeah. Notice they're using the shoe thing.
Oh yeah,
Shoe thing again.
shoes and gloves. Yes,
Shoes and gloves.
yes. For those who don't remember, the 2 episodes ago, me and Rose did Equinox, where they kept on coming back, which was again a great murder mystery. Who is the killer? This one, who is the firebug? And this was actually really nice, the way they set it up, because so we open up with David, who is basically homeless, living in a campsite.
Yeah, with nothing.
Nothing. Nothing. He's got no gear, nothing. Well, it seems from what Jack McGee says that apparently the Hulk ran into the woods, and
Right.
I kind of wonder if maybe David got lost in the woods after that, where you're like, where the heck am I? I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
he got other clothes, but he would seem to be like very much out of his element out there in the woods.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But
Extenuating circumstances.
yes, Eric Wilson, our fire chief, finds him and brings him in to be to essentially help with the firefighting duties, because they do have a wildfire they're dealing with.
Yeah. And he apparently, if he can fry an egg and make coffee, he's in.
There you go. Well, but as we see,
Big.
it's a big fire, and they do need lots of people, because
Yeah.
that's going to come back with Jack McGee.
Yeah.
Jack, I don't know. I don't know if it's that, Jack Colvin has just given up on this show, or he doesn't want to fight for better parts for Jack McGee. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's another one where Jack gets a lot of short shrift. Although, for what it's worth, Jack is right there on the heels of the Hulk, and does get
Yeah.
back in a very brilliant way. Almost catches him, and actually, I think he has one of the greatest near misses in it, which we'll get to in a minute. So,
Right.
our we have about 4 main characters. One is Eric Wilson, who is our, I believe it's Eric Wilson, who is our fire chief. You have Randy Phelps, who's played by Kathleen Lloyd, who is honestly, to me, just the star of this episode.
Yeah.
She
I
really
felt
has such a great emotional arc. And of course, who is our prime suspect throughout. And they really heavily hint that she is.
right.
Although, for what it's worth, I mean, we'll get to that at the end, which is kind of maybe a weird little coda to it. And then you have, I don't know if it's Weaver or it's Bennett, but that's the other young guy. And then you have the other guy who actually I thought was probably going to turn out to be in the murder, was the guy who was like, hey, at least we're getting paid good. That they were going to go with a much more venial choice for who the firebug was, so that it was the guy who was he's just there because, hey, the more fires you set, the more overtime you get.
Yeah.
But as happens, David's job is he's basically doing support. He runs the mess, but then he also, when they're fighting the fire, he pulls people out of the fire. He gets them oxygen, tries to get them back to base camp. And
I had a problem with that oxygen tank being so close to that fire.
You too, huh? Yeah.
It's like, is this going to happen the way I think it? No, it's not. Oh, okay. Wow. Strong casing.
Unlike the psychic episode, in which oxygen tanks, when someone just lights a cigarette next to them, explode.
Yes.
Apparently
like a Ford Pinto.
Yes. Apparently the ones that you take into forest fires, much more resilient.
There you go. You just have to give it all you got.
Yeah, I am inclined to think that that actually oxygen tanks are a little bit more resilient than that. Though, of course, they can explode. I mean, that's the thing. It's like when you have that no smoking around oxygen tanks, it doesn't mean that, if you do smoke, it's going to explode immediately. It means that, it's not going to explode if we don't light matches near it,
Right.
Not going to say it's going to explode if we do, but I'm going to say it's not going to explode if we don't. So,
yeah.
Oh, so we get our introduction of our characters. We see that the young guy, he's very upset about everything. Doesn't like which maybe, it was meant to throw a thing on him, but who they really kind of push heavy for is, of course, Randy Phelps, because she immediately is talking about how she loves the fire and loves fire truck. It's like, okay.
Yeah. She wasn't a normal child, and she wasn't looking at the fashions when the other girls were. She was chasing fire engines.
And man, I don't know. This is like 1980s. Were they kind of coding her as gay there? Do you think? Was that like
I don't
kind of
think
a subtext
so.
there? You don't think so?
I don't think. No, I think they were strictly, because remember, this is at the height of Gloria Steinem and the feminist movement. And they were really pushing the women can do anything men can do thing.
Yeah.
So I really didn't get, the gay vibe from that. I just really got that she, was misunderstood and she was ridiculed for wanting to do what she loved to do. It was her passion. And there was a lot of women that weren't able to express themselves like that back then because they weren't taken seriously.
Yeah. But and I guess what kind of, and again, because you're always looking at these with these modern eyes and how a certain line might read in our modern era, and the line I loved in that, which is because of course, so basically what happens is after our first Hulk out, one of the characters who is being pulled out by David sees
Mm-hmm.
the Hulk, but he also sees David go over a hill when David sees a fire, but the other guy doesn't see the fire there yet. So he thinks, well,
Right.
maybe David set the fire.
Right.
And when David gets back, everyone's like, they think you might have set the fires.
Yeah.
And now, and of course, David sees, well, maybe this is a good chance for him to just leave, but of course, our fire boss says, nope, you got to stay.
Nope.
Because
Suffer the dirty looks.
yeah, you suffer the
Instead
dirty
of,
looks, or you can deal with them with the cops.
Yeah.
And but after that, because of course, when that all goes down, David had seen Randy Phelps there at the fire at the same time he was, but he doesn't
Yeah.
rat her out because he says, "Look, I've been in the wrong place in the wrong time a lot, so I'm not going to accuse you till I know."
Right.
And which is kind of sweet. And then we get her very nice discussion about how she was different, and when you're a tomboy when you're 10, it's cute. When you're a
Cute.
tomboy when you're 13, not so much. And
Yeah.
which and it was a nice thing. But what I say is, like, she gives him this line, and again, just like last episode, an episode where you get some great lines, there's some great monologues.
Mm-hmm.
This was a great monologue for an actress, and she tells David, you can convince them you didn't start the fire. I can't convince them I'm not different. And then as she's walking out, she says, I am different.
Yeah.
And I loved that because it is this
Yeah.
real statement of self-actualization, which was great.
Yeah.
And you can read that as gay, or you can read that as just, no, I don't have to be gay just because I'm a self-actualized woman.
There you go. Exactly.
Which I guess is the counter argument there. That no,
Yeah,
I'm just
and
a self-actualized
people
woman.
are always going to fear what they don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
A cliched line, be that as it may, but they really pound that home.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with Weaver, with the whole, he's laying on the cot and he's all, oh, we know everybody and we went to school with each other, but we don't know those two and
Yes.
they could be the culprit. And he's just so, really? Are you that small-minded? But apparently he is.
Yeah, well.
That you're just thinking that, oh, there's no one that we know that could have done that.
Well, but for what it's worth,
yeah,
okay. For what it's worth, all things being equal, he kind of makes a point about the fire chief, which is that he is this guy who was brought in from outside. You know what I mean? He's this big, and again, it's an interesting aspect because we had this. Okay, so we're back.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know what caused that dropout, but we'll start it again. Okay. So what was the last thing you heard?
What was the last thing I heard? I don't remember. I remember I was talking about Weaver.
Yeah. Oh, yes. So Weaver.
How small-minded he was.
Yeah. But like I said, but he did seem to get the fire chief right or the fire boss right, because he said, they went and they hired this big city guy.
Yeah.
Who then hires Randy. Says they passed over some local guys for the Randy.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Women. Ugh.
Yeah, I know. Yuck.
Yuck. Who likes girls around? They but he does make this point. It's interesting how he kind of misses his own point as he makes his point, because of course he tells the story about how his bike got stolen and he couldn't figure out who stole it, and then his dad solved it, like, in 5 minutes. He just went to the new kid on the block, which is such a horrible lesson.
Yeah, that's a terrible thing to say. Oh, it's a new kid, so he's new people are trouble.
Yes, but for what it's worth, that is bore out, because of course, spoiler, the firebug is actually the fire boss, the outside guy, the hero who was hired in to be their fire boss. And what's interesting to me about that is that, in the Death Mask episode a couple episodes ago, it was, and this is kind of this interesting thing because there's a lot of parallels between that and this. They kind of are going back to the well a bit here. Because in that, again, it was this idea of the, hero cop from out of town who's been hired to be the boss, and then all of a sudden all these crimes start happening, and it turns out he's the one who's doing it.
Yeah.
Pretty much the same story here, which is that, they,
Do you think
Mm-hmm.
when he was talking with Randy that he was kind of confessing a bit there? That you kind of get the idea that he's just saying a little too much.
Well, yeah, because and for what it's worth, and I think that's maybe why he hired Randy, because I think maybe he felt she was a kindred spirit, but she wasn't, And that's the thing, is like she was like, no, dude, I like to fight the fires, I don't like to set them,
Yeah.
Exactly. But it was that's another great scene, and again, one of these items where you're watching it and you're like, is he going to kiss her?
Yeah, you're not really sure. He was getting kind of intimate there. Verbally, he was, making them seem like they were a match made in heaven or something. No pun intended, match hot fire.
Yes.
But
for the actress's credit, you could definitely see the like, oh, what are you doing? kind of look on her face. She was
she was getting a little uncomfortable with that whole conversation.
She was not having any Mooney David Banner eyes over this guy.
No, which is great.
Yeah. And never, he was a handsome guy. But it's like, but you're also really creepy.
Yeah. Be that as it may, you're a bit of a weirdo.
But yeah, and of course that's what tips her off, so that when her and David are back fighting the fire, she says, I know who did it. It is him. And she basically rats him out, which is kind of a neat thing that she does. Although it's kind of interesting, it's interesting in the whole context about how, so her and David know he's the guy, but no one wants to stop to disrupt the situation because we're fighting a fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This takes our priority. This is a major priority here.
Exactly. It's like, okay, we know who the firebug is, so let's try. We can deal with that later. Right now, let's deal with this fire. In fact, to the point where, and of course, what happens is, we'll get to that in a minute, but of course, it gets made as an offhand remark that, the only way you can get up there is if you volunteer. So, of course, Jack McGee goes and he volunteers.
Oh, I know. And, I like that conversation that he had with the other reporter in the car. And I thought his character was kind of spicy. So I thought, oh, what's he doing? He's got these cards he's playing with, while he's rambling on and on. Yeah. And then he says that, they are, they want volunteers. Now, you can go up there and volunteer, but it's a 20-mile walk back to town.
Yeah.
But the minute he said that, I thought, this guy ain't cut out for doing no firefighting forestry work. Look at that gut on him.
Yeah.
Jeez. Eating cheeseburgers behind a desk, that's his that's his calling.
Are you talking about the other reporter, or are you talking about...
I'm talking about Jack.
Jack, yeah, well...
Jokingly, because he's all like, oh, I'll do anything to get a story.
Yeah, but he does. He goes up there and he's there.
He does go.
And he does
his credit.
Some real half butt shoveling on some dirt.
Yeah, they were really digging.
Yeah.
At one point, the dirt comes flying out. The cameraman's probably going, dude, seriously?
I love
how that off camera.
I love how we see all the fire behind them, and yet all the dirt's going forward. It's like you're watching this like, where are you putting that dirt? Why are you doing? But of course, this goes to the fact that it's on the Universal backlot, because it's like if they actually throw the dirt on it, they're going to get dirt all in the gas jet that's running the fire. because they've got these gas jets behind them to create the fire. But if you actually throw the dirt on the gas jet, you could ruin the gas jet,
Yeah, you don't want
And
to
that's
do
coming
that.
out of your salary, buddy. Let me tell
Absolutely.
you,
We need to use those again for another episode.
Yeah, well, not for like I said, this was at the time when Universal was really marketing this backlot as an amusement park, and I do think that part of this was to say, and this is where we shot the Hulk, and this is where we did this,
Yeah.
and here's that big forest fire, and they'd push a button and the fire would go, whoo, and then they could just make it all go away, because that was,
Yeah.
from I only know from TV because I've never actually been to Universal Studios because I never got out to the West Coast. But that was the thing is that, from what I've seen when the tours, they would like have the tour group go and then they'd make the buildings explode and then they'd have them all go back together again.
Yeah. They're good at that.
Yeah, well, that's what's awesome about the Universal Studios backlot. And this was a great use of that.
Right.
Anyway, so we do get Jack McGee there and we do get David there as well. Running
Mm-hmm.
water, and of course, David doesn't realize Jack McGee's there. Jack McGee doesn't realize David there. David brings Jack McGee water. Jack McGee pulls down his mask and he drinks the water. David's about to pull down his mask, then he realizes it's Jack McGee and he pulls up his mask again.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Too close for comfort.
Too close for comfort. And then we find out that a camper and his girlfriend are stuck up on the ridge. And Jack McGee says, I'm not going up there. I'm a reporter. I'm not a firefighter. And it's like...
Yeah. I'm a doctor, man. I'm not a firefighter.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you're no help, Jack. So, and that kind of disappointed me. Because I really felt like Jack should have been a guy who was like, he
wimped out of that way too quickly.
Yeah,
no.
He was like,
what did I tell you?
Yeah,
cheeseburger guy.
Cheeseburgers behind the desk. I think Jack fought in Korea. I think it's been established that Jack fought in Korea. So I don't know if that's 100%. I think, of course, maybe he's seen his fair share of, that kind of stuff. So, anyway.
Yeah. I think he's, it sounds like he's pretty close to retirement to me. His attitude's a bit lackadaisical.
Well, honestly, this Hulk feat is wearing on him. I gotta think so.
I think so. Yeah.
Anyway, so of course what happens is now David knows that the fire boss is the bomber. Randy knows, but they still got to fight the fires. Randy and another fireman get trapped trying to save the female camper. Of course, Jack tells them, well, they went up to the ridge,
Right.
And David and the fire boss and the third guy, Weaver, they're sitting around and they're just, and David looks at him and says, you're thinking about blowing the water tower to put out the water.
Put out the fire.
Yeah, water to put out the fire. Yeah, I'm trying to think of fight water with water. No, fire with water. That's how it works.
Fire water.
Yes. And then, David says, do you have any more explosives on you? And Weaver's like, why would he have explosives? Wait, and it's just like Weaver, and of course Weaver's just basically querying the deal, because David's like, yeah, he's the bomber, we know it, okay, but now we got to blow the water tower to put out the fire.
Now we got to turn this into something for the good of everyone.
Exactly, because, why get wound up in this silliness? But of course, Weaver, he's on edge, man. He's not going to let it pass.
No.
And we get a lot of quick exposition there because, of course, Weaver destroys the remote, and then they go, and then Weaver's like, well, no, he's going to have to blow himself up to blow that up because, reasons. And, well, reasons that he knows it, it's like, I don't know. And then that leads to, I forget, what causes them to fall? Was it
I'm not sure. They got into a tussle.
Oh, they got into a tussle.
Quite a tussle. It looked like they were really going at it too. And then something happened, and something fell, and it fell on David,
and that causes David to Hulk out. And then basically David doesn't let Wilson sacrifice himself, but instead just smashes the water tower himself. And again, you can see this is a universal backlot item. because
Yeah.
and you can see this because the water flows from the bottom of the spill, not the
Hmm.
top. Um, but that's
Yeah.
part of the shtick, And of
Yeah.
course, the water comes down, saves the day.
Hmm.
Hulk is hero. And then what I thought was an interesting coda on this is that you do get Randy and David walking away at the end. And again, why he knows Jack McGee's there. He
Hmm.
knows this is an active fireplace. People have seen the Hulk at the fire, but he's just walking around with Randy. It's
Yeah.
a little bit weak there on that. But this is after everyone's left, I guess. So
Yeah.
and
Love the leather bag. Don't know where that came from.
yeah, well,
Pretty nifty.
he gets them sent in.
Yeah. There you go. There you
Uh,
go.
but what I thought was a weird coda is Randy basically giving this psychological explanation, basically saying that Eric's not a bad guy, but this happens to soldiers and cops too. They get so wound up in the action, and then they just start causing the problems. Which again, like I said, you kind of get this implication that could be Randy in a couple of years. That Randy might become the Firebug.
Well, yeah, he could. Yeah, she could be setting herself up.
But yeah, so yeah, and that's how we end it, and that's the end of the season. Is David walks off, leaving yet another young woman in his wake.
Hmm.
He solved some problems, but now the Hulk has to move on,
Yeah.
and that's the end of our season. Rose.
Wow. A dramatic ending it was.
It was, and like I said, and it does have some nice callbacks to previous episodes. You know,
Hmm.
Not the least of which is, like I said, Mystery Man, which was our real big turning point for Jack McGee, which was in a forest fire, and here we have maybe kind of a lesser point of Jack McGee. If nothing else, maybe Jack McGee just tiring of the entire Hulk beat. He's given up so
Yeah.
much for this great
You
green
got the
whale.
lazy Jack McGee now, who's just
Yeah,
really careless. If I get a
yeah,
story, great. If I don't, whatever.
whatever. I got a gig. And
Yeah.
any final thoughts on the episode, Rose?
Well, actually, it's a little bit silly, but what's life if you don't have a bit of silliness? I noticed that David always has names that his last name starts with a B.
Mm-hmm.
You
You
know,
just noticed that.
yeah, and it takes me a minute, but I usually get there.
Okay.
And I couldn't understand why insisting that it always does that, unless when he goes to get his money out of his Swiss bank account, that he has the signature that is indiscernible. So whatever last name he puts has to start with a B. So you see the David and a B and a a slash or something. I don't know.
That is some awesome headcanon, and now that is officially the headcanon for the Jack McGee files. I love that. That is brilliant. That makes so. See, I always just thought he was just not a good enough actor to ever have a name other than David. So, that's like the old Tony Danza rule. That the reason why Tony plays characters named Tony is because
Yeah.
no director thought he could respond to another name. Well, that's why they named his character Tony on Taxi. Was that? Well, at least that's what they said.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and then it just became a shtick with him that he always played guys named Tony. Of course, not for nothing for Tony Danza, he does look like a guy named Tony.
He does.
He does.
Totally.
It's like if you had a prototypical guy named Tony, it would look a lot like Tony Danza. And he's like, oh yeah, Tony. Yeah, but that is great. That I mean that is like I said, I love that headcanon now because it does go into this idea that we have, and and it works perfectly for the '80s because of obviously he can't always get it, and yeah, it just makes sense. There is this money somewhere. He
Yeah.
just can't get to it, and it's hard to get to, and
Yeah.
would explain why he keeps on using IDs, as we saw in Death Mass, and he's like got these fake IDs, all with various names of David B. So
Hmm.
it is an amazing bit. I like this episode. I love this season. I am so mad at Hulu right now, and I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
We've got like the first 2 episodes of the next season, which is Prometheus Part 1 and Prometheus Part 2.
Yeah.
And then we get, and then the next one on Hulu is like 8 episodes later. And it's like, what am I supposed to do with the rest of this? So,
I don't know.
we'll deal with it. We'll deal with it. Okay. Rose, how can people find you if they want to talk to you about this wonderful thing called The Incredible Hulk?
I am the Incredible Hulk. Talk to me about it. It's awesome. I am at 80s Music Girl on Twitter, 80s Music Girl on Facebook, and 80s Music Girl on Instagram.
Beautiful. And, of course, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email way, the way my mas and pas used to do back in the 80s. Listen for that screechy dial-up modem if you had those back in the 80s. I didn't get mine till the 90s, I'll admit that. But, they
Me
existed. Too. I saw Silver Spoons. They were sending emails on Silver Spoons, man, back in the 80s because they were cool.
Yeah.
And he was the son of a billionaire toy tycoon, so,
This is true.
You could get those ENIAC computers in your basement. But if you want to write to me in that old-fashioned email way, you can write to me at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. And, of course, follow me on the Twitters that I live tweet. The Incredible Hulk, 7 o'clock on Saturdays on MeTV, which is our default for me, quite frankly, is that if the worst-case scenario happens and I can't get these episodes, I just have to watch them live on MeTV, and then I can talk about them later, which is like, which we can do, but then I have nothing to promote. But anyway, if anyone has a solution, write to me or follow me or personal message me on Twitter at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's right there in the middle for quality. Thank you for joining us, fair listeners. Please Hulk out with us again.
We hope you've enjoyed this show. This podcast is part of the 80s Reboot Overdrive channel on Southgate Media Group. You can follow us on Facebook on the 80s Reboot group page. We're also on Twitter and Tumblr at 80s Reboot. We invite you to check out all the wonderful podcasts and blogs available at southgatemediagroup.com. And thank you for reliving the 80s.